Hello everyone, today we're going to be looking at how to set up Revenue Cloud in a new environment. So we'll take a look at the different steps needed to enable Revenue Cloud and get it working in a net new environment. So how to set it up, assigning permission sets and permission set licenses, all the feature enablements, page layouts, and creating your first product and quote. Let's jump ahead in Salesforce. In Salesforce, first thing you're going to want to do is go to your user, go to permission set licenses, and assign all the required permission set licenses. So depending on which features you need enabled, that list is going to vary, but we'll enable billing, the business rules engine, designer, and runtime. Clause management you can enable if you plan on using clauses for CLM. You can keep scrolling through that list. There's going to be a lot in Revenue Cloud environments. So if you want to enable CLM, you'll also want to select that. That one, data pipelines base user, is going to be required, as well as the next one if you plan on using billing in that environment. If you need to use decimal for quantities in quoting and order creation, you'll need to assign the decimal quantity design time for admins and runtime for users. DocGen Designer, if you need to use document generation features out of Revenue Cloud for users, you'll assign that one. Field service we can skip over. Fulfillment user, permission set licenses, that's going to be for dynamic revenue orchestrator. So if you want to set that up, you can go ahead and assign that one. Microsoft Word 365, again, is a CLM feature. So if you plan on using that, you can get that set up. Obligation management is going to be around dynamic revenue orchestrator. So you can assign this one. If you need to use any Omni Studio features, you can assign the Omni Studio permission set license. Product catalog management admin. So you've got a couple different ones for product catalog management. Community user is going to be for external users, if that's relevant. Viewer is going to be for your regular users. Then product configuration, you can assign. Product discovery, you'll need to assign to your users as well. Rate management, if you plan on using usage-based pricing, is going to be required. So I can assign those as well. Revenue Cloud user is the overarching permission set license that you need for Revenue Cloud. And if we keep on scrolling past the API, pricing, design time, and runtime you'll need for your admin user for initial setup. Usage management as well. If you plan on using usage management, you'll need to assign those. Wallet management is also attached to the new usage management feature. Once you've got all of this set up, you can hit save. The permission set licenses are assigned, then you need to assign the different permission sets that are relevant. So again, you'll scroll through this and assign anything that's relevant. So assetize order is the permission to create assets from orders. Billing permission sets, again, if you need to set up billing, you're going to want to assign those. All the CLM licensing, if you plan on using CLM. Create contract API, you're going to need billing schedules from billing transactions as well if you use billing. Calculate prices and tax API, you do want to assign clause, designer, and user if you plan on using CLM. Again, DRO, if you plan on setting up DRO, you're going to want to set up. Data pipelines base user, again, that's going to be required for billing. Decimal quantity, similar to the permission set license. If you need decimals, you're going to need to assign that permission set. Document gen designer and user, you can assign to your users. Fulfillment designer, management operator, that's going to be related to DRO. Generate invoices from billing schedule API. If you want to use billing, the different APIs for amendments, cancellations, and renewals you want to assign to your user. So we'll add all of this. Then we're at Microsoft 365. Again, if you plan on using those CLM features, you're going to want to assign this to your user. And then obligations is going to be DRO, Omni Studio. Again, if you need to use the Omni Studio, rather, you're going to want to set those up. Orchestration, process manager for DRO, order submit. So if you want to be able to submit an order for dynamic revenue orchestrator, you need that one. Place order API, if you for order creation, you're going to need then the product catalog, permission sets, you need to assign product discovery as well, the different APIs for product and price configuration, you're going to need for your admin user. Then rate management, again, for usage-based billing, you're going to want to assign those. Rule engine, you're going to assign this as well to your user. Pricing, admin, design time, manager, runtime. Again, you can fine-tune this based on your user type, but as the admin, I'm going to assign all of those for now. Scroll all the way, tax admin and config if you want to use tax in Revenue Cloud, usage management and usage design user, data processing engine for billing, void a posted invoice API if you need that in billing, and wallet management user is going to be related to the new usage management features that came out in spring 25. And you can hit save once you've gone through the list. So now our user has the different permission sets and permission set licenses that are required. Now we have the different permission set and permission set licenses set up. Let's head over to revenue settings. That's going to be where your Revenue Cloud settings. So for those familiar with CPQ, that would be your package settings essentially, right? And depending on how your environment was set up, there might be a couple different things. So the first one is enable new order save behavior. So that environment already has this enabled. If the new order save behavior is not enabled, you'll need to, in setup, look for release updates and look for that enable new order save behavior feature. Make sure you enable that and then go back to revenue settings. Once that order save behavior is enabled, you'll be able to turn on the Revenue Cloud features for your environment. That's already done again here, but you'll be able to toggle that switch. Next step is make sure that the quotes are set up for Revenue Cloud. So just hit go to quote settings. And we can make sure that we enable quotes and enable create quotes without a related opportunity. We can hit save. That step is complete. Make sure you add it to the layouts that are relevant in your environment. And let's head back to revenue settings. Now that this is done, we also need to set up orders. So there are a couple order settings that need to be enforced for Revenue Cloud. So we need to enable negative quantity, zero quantity, enhanced commerce orders, and that's it. We can hit save. Now again, head back to revenue settings. Let's refresh to make sure this is all enabled correctly. Now we can see that our quotes are enabled correctly, orders are enabled correctly. So nothing else to do for now in the revenue setting. Now we want to go to pricing in setup. So search for pricing and then go to Salesforce pricing settings. Want to turn on Salesforce pricing. Once that's done, we can refresh our screen. And now under pricing, and that might take a minute, but we should have a bit more showing up on there. Let's refresh one more time. Look for pricing. Once that's done, if you look for pricing, now you'll also have access to Salesforce pricing setup. Nothing to do right away on this page, but this is now available because we've enabled Salesforce pricing in our environment. Next thing to do is going to be to look for context service settings and setup. Now you need to make sure you enable context definitions for your environment. Once this is done, we can hit refresh and search for context again, and we should have a new option in our menu, context definitions. Under context definitions, we're going to have a few options available out of the box. The main ones that we care about right now to enable Revenue Cloud are going to be product discovery context and sales transaction context. We're going to use those to create our pricing procedures and our pricing discovery procedures. First thing you should go through is instead of using the standard ones, because if we ever need to customize, we'll need to have a custom version of those context definitions. So first thing we'll do is head over to the right-hand side of the product discovery settings, and we'll hit extend to create a new version, an extended version of the product discovery context. So you can give it a name, whatever you like. We'll simply use the same name, but with ext as the initial value for this. So ext product discovery context, define your effective from date, time to live, you don't need to change, hit next. And now we're going to go through the different nodes and attributes that are available in our context definition. We're not going to modify this in this initial pass, but you might need to leverage this if you need to create custom field mappings, or if you want to use custom fields in your product discovery or sales transaction pricing when we get there. No need to do this right away for that initial base setup, but if you're curious how to do this, we've got a couple different videos that cover this. So price adjustment matrix or field mapping are going to cover how you can modify those. In sales transaction context, we'll do the same thing. So we're going to create an extended version of our sales transaction context. So I'll call that extended sales transaction context. Again, define our effective from date, time to live, no need to modify. We'll go through nodes and attributes. While this is loading, if you like the content, take a moment to subscribe. And once that loads, we can keep going through this. And then what's going to be remaining is define a default mapping for our context definitions and activate them. Click next, go through the attributes, attribute tags, nothing to modify again, and then we can head over to the custom definitions tab on our screen. Let's first look at the extended product discovery context. And we want to head over to the map data tab and make sure that we set the product discovery mapping as our default mapping. So we'll hit edit, mark as default, we're going to set to true, and hit map. That's going to take us to the mapping screen. No action to take on this one, so you can close out. Now you've got a default mapping set, and we can activate our product discovery context. That context is now active, so we can go back to the list of context definitions. Now add back over to custom definitions, look at extended sales transaction context, click through to go in it. Again, map data tab. And now for this one, we want to set the sales transaction mapping as the default mapping. So let's click edit again, set the mark as default checkbox to true, and hit map. Again, this is going to take us to the mapping screen, but we can close out of this, go back, and now that this is set to default, we can activate. Our mapping is set to active. So now at this point, we can go ahead and create the different procedures that we need to set up Revenue Cloud. So let's head over in the standard menu, not the Salesforce, not the setup menu, but the standard Salesforce menu. You're going to look for expression set templates. This is going to give us templates of the different procedures that we need to set up in Revenue Cloud. Obviously, you can modify them afterward, but they are a good starting point if you're setting up your environment. So let's first click through to the revenue management default pricing procedure. This is going to give us the default pricing waterfall for Revenue Cloud. Again, this can be modified depending on how you need to set up your pricing in your environment. But for now, we'll simply use that as is. So we'll do, to be able to use that template, we'll hit save as. We'll create a new pricing procedure because we don't have one created right now. So we'll set that up, define the rank. We'll not set it to active now because we need to modify the context definition first. So we'll save that new version. This is going to open up a new version of that pricing procedure in a separate tab once that goes through. Once it's saved, again, we're taken up to a new tab in our browser. That version is not active yet. And we don't want to activate it now because we need to change the pricing procedure on the header of our pricing procedure first. But if you head over to the pricing procedure properties on the cog on the left-hand side, you need to make sure that your start date time is after your new context definition start date time that we just set up. So right now, this is set to October 24, 23, but we need to set it after February 1st, 2025, which is what I set as the start type of our context. So we'll set that to February 2nd time. You can be as specific as you need to. We'll leave that as is for now, and we'll head back to our expression set templates, and let's simply search for pricing procedure in the standard Salesforce menu. You should now see your newly created pricing procedure. Click through to that pricing procedure. And again, as you can see, the context definition is the standard one in the environment. Before you activate your pricing procedure version, you want to make sure that this is updated to your extended version. So hit edit, change the context definition to the extended sales transaction context, hit save. And once that's done, we can head back to our pricing procedure once the saving has gone through, and we're going to be able to activate our version once that's done. Once saving has gone through and it's set to your extended sales transaction, head back to your pricing procedure. Now you're good to save and activate your pricing procedure version. Once it's saved, it activate, and we should now have an active pricing procedure. So we're good to keep going with our setup. So let's head back to expression set templates in our browser. So we'll go back to pricing procedure templates. In expression set templates, the next one we want to set up is the product discovery pricing procedure. So let's click through on that one. Again, we can leave everything as is in that template. If you need to modify, you can modify, but we don't need to set up for the initial setup. So we'll go through the same thing. We'll hit save as, create a new pricing procedure, set the rank to 1. Don't activate right away because, again, we need to modify the context definition for this. It's saved. That's going to create that new pricing procedure and pricing procedure version. We're taken to that pricing procedure right away, but we'll add back to the setup. And under setup in the standard menu, we'll again look for pricing procedures. We should now have your product discovery pricing procedure. If you click through on that one, we'll go through the same step here of editing this and setting the context definition to the extended, not sales transaction, but product discovery context for the product discovery pricing procedure. We'll hit save. And once that's saved, we can now head back over to the pricing procedure itself. Again, make sure you go under the pricing procedure properties. You set the start date to a date after the effective date of your context definition. And when you've set that up, you can hit save and activate that updated product discovery pricing procedure. All right, so we have a pricing procedure and a product discovery pricing procedure set. Now we need to head back to setup in Salesforce, and we've got a couple of additional settings to set. So first thing we'll do is we'll head over to product discovery settings. So we need to make sure everything is enabled under product discovery settings. So we've got this right now. The context definition for product discovery is set to the standard one. So let's make sure we set that to our extended definition. Then we want to turn on select pricing procedure, and we'll define the pricing procedure that we just created for product discovery. Here we go. So that's what we need to do under product discovery for initial setup. Then let's search in setup again for Salesforce pricing setup. And under setup, we've got a default pricing recipe, which is fine for our current requirements. But what we do need to set is a pricing procedure. So we'll go ahead and select our revenue management default pricing procedure under pricing. And once that's done, we can head back over to revenue settings. And under revenue settings, we also want to scroll down, and under setup Salesforce pricing, we'll define again the same revenue management default pricing procedure as the pricing procedure. There's a bunch of additional settings that you can set under revenue settings, which are not required for our initial setup, but depending on which features you want to turn on, configurator, RAM deals, document builder, grouping, and quotes and orders, you can go ahead and enable those. We have videos on most of those if you're curious about the steps that are needed for all of those different features. Once you've got all this base setup done and set up, now it's time to go to a couple different objects, and we'll want to make sure that the page layouts are updated correctly. So first we'll look at price book entries. Under price book entry, there's a new requirement for Revenue Cloud that you need to define a product selling model for your price book entry. So you want to make sure that that product selling model is added to the layout, and we'll also add the is derived checkbox to the layout. That one is not required unless you decide to use derived pricing, which would be the equivalent of % of total pricing. So product selling model is required on your price book entries for Revenue Cloud. So you can, that's an optional step, but you can set it to required to make sure you don't miss that step when you set up your price book entries. Then go back to the object manager. One more thing to update is going to be your quote page layout. So on the quote page layout, there's a lot of additional fields that you could define on there if you want. The main one that I care about for initial setup is going to be the account for quote field that you can add on there. So the standard account field on quote comes from the opportunity that's related, but in Revenue Cloud, you can create quotes without opportunities. So you'll be able to define the account in that account for quote field. Once that's done, again, we can hit save, add back to the object manager, look for product, and we'll want to add the relevant product fields to our layout, as well as the related lists that are going to be required for Revenue Cloud setup. So we've got a couple of standard fields on our layout, but we're going to want to add at least, and again, you can add more if required, but we want to add based on, if we want to create our product based on a template, configure during sale to define whether it's a configurable product, and we can access the product configurator for that product. Display URL, if you want to show an image in the browse catalogs page for your product, you're going to want to add that. Is assetizable is going to define as a checkbox whether assets are created or not for that product. Product type to define whether it's a standard simple product or a bundle. Quantity unit of measure, if you need to use unit of measure. Sell only with other products, that's another checkbox that you can add. It's going to be the equivalent of a component checkbox in CPQ. So is that product only available within bundles? Specification type you can add or not. Tax policy, if you're going to use taxes, you want to add. And then usage model type, if you plan on using usage pricing in your environment. So we can add all of those fields. And then in the related list section of our product record, a couple things we want to add. So we already have price book entries, but we do need to add product selling model. we'll add product selling model in there because that's going to be required. And again, depending on what features you need, you plan on using, you can add a lot more related lists, right? Which categories your product is assigned to. For example, the child components, if you've got bundle attribute-based adjustments, if you use those for adjustments, product usage grants are going to be relevant if you do usage pricing. For now, we don't need any more for that initial setup, so we'll leave that as is for now. Now that our product layout is updated, we're good to go with as far as page layouts are concerned. So let's head back to standard Salesforce. We'll search for the product catalog management app and we'll want to start from there. So let's search for that in your menu, go to the product catalog management app, and we're good to go. So some initial data we're going to want to create. So if you want to be able to add a product to a quote, you'll need to have a catalog and categories created. So we'll first create a catalog. You can give it a name, effective start date, end date. Don't currently limit visibility, so you can leave that as is and you can hit save. We'll create a category under our catalog. So we'll keep that simple for now. Simply call that demo category. You can give it a sort order and hit save. If you have multiple categories, then the sort order is going to define how they show up within your catalog as you're browsing catalogs. We've got a catalog created. Now we also need to create our product selling models to define which product selling models are going to be available in your environment. So product selling models can be, is it a one-time product? Is it a term-based product? Is it an evergreen product? And if it's either evergreen or term-based, is it a monthly product or a yearly product or a quarterly, right? You can define whatever you want at that point. So let's create a new product selling model. We'll define that as one time. No pricing term units, selling model type set to one time, and we can set the status to active. And again, you could create multiple product selling models. We'll only create two for that example. The second one we're going to create is term-based, monthly. Selling model type is going to be term-defined. Pricing term is going to be 1. Term unit is going to be months, and status can be set to active. Now that we've got all of that base data set, now we can go ahead and create a product. So let's head back to the home page of our product catalog management app. Head over to products. Let's create a new product. Simply call this one demo product one time. So we'll set that one as a one-time product. Want to make sure it's set to active. Based on, we're not going to use, you can define product family as discussed. Is it configurable during sale or not? If you have a display URL for the image on the browse catalogs page, can you create an asset from it? If you have a quantity unit of measure, you're going to define it here. Product type is whether that product is a simple product or a bundle. That can only be defined right now as of Spring 25 on creation. So if I don't set it to a bundle, I can't then set it to a bundle afterwards, and vice versa, right? So if I define it as a bundle, I can't go back on that decision. I'll have to create a new product if I want to change that decision. So we'll keep that as a simple product, and we'll hit save. One more thing to do before you define your price book entries. I was going to forget, but let's head over to your price books and make sure you've got, again, this might not be the case, but this is a net new environment. So the price book, standard price book is not active. So we want to make sure that that's set to active. And when your price book is set to active, we can again head back to our demo product. We'll head over to the related list, make sure we have a product selling model option. So we'll select our one-time product selling model. If you had selected the term-based monthly, you would also need to define a proration policy. One should exist out of the box in your environment, default proration policy. And you can define additional ones if you need to fine tune the settings, but we'll go back on this, set the product selling model to one time. Hit save. We've got our product and our product selling model option. Now we want to define a price book entry. So we'll add a standard price to our product. Let's call this 1,000. It's not derived, but we do want to set the product selling model to match our product selling model option one time. And this means that you can have one product multiple times in one price book, right? Because you can have multiple price book entries for the same product, same price book. For example, we can sell that product at $1,000 as a one-time product or as a subscription, monthly subscription at $100 a month, for example. And those two can exist, and that's going to be an option when you add the product to a quote. Hit save on your price book entry. And finally, let's make sure our product is assigned to a category. So we only have one right now. So we'll simply set that as our, select your demo category that you've created, and it's saved. So now the product is created. exists in a price book, is assigned to a category, so it should be available to quote if we create a new quote. So if we look for quotes, head over to our quote, we'll create a new quote, header, quote name, demo quote. You can define as many fields as you want, right? Define an account if you need to. I don't have any accounts set up in that environment yet, but if I add, you could add that, and then you can see the quote line editor. At this point, you've got the product created, and now you would be ready to add products to your quote, but first you will need to refresh your decision tables. So as I was saying, before you can add products, because right now if we hit the browse catalog button on our quote, select our price book, we're not going to get any products available for quoting yet because we haven't refreshed our decision tables. So to refresh your decision tables, you've got a couple different options, and we'll add the link. We have a full video covering how to refresh decision tables, but you've got a couple different options available. So you can go either to pricing and look under pricing setup, and you can sync pricing data. This is going to burn through you've got a limit on how many times you can refresh decision tables, and this is going to burn through it pretty quickly. So one better option would be to go directly to decision tables, select the decision table that you want to refresh. In our case, we want to refresh price book entries. And from there, we want to hit refresh top right, and this is going to launch the refresh operation of our decision table. The other option that's available is also to call that refresh for decision tables within a flow. Again, link to the other video on how to refresh decision tables and when to refresh them is going to be up there, and you can click through to that video. This is going to take a couple minutes for the refresh to go through. Once it is refreshed, we'll see that our last refresh date is going to be updated. Once your decision table is refreshed, we can see that that just got updated. We should be good to go back to our quote and add the product to our quote. So let's take a second to refresh our screen, add back to the browse catalogs button, and now we should see our product is available. So we can add that product, hit save quote, and there we go. So we went through the entire Revenue Cloud setup from scratch in a new environment, up to adding a product on the quote. Obviously, there's a bunch of processes downstream of this, creating orders, creating assets, and I've already built videos on most of those downstream processes. So just look for them on our channel if you're curious. In the links below, I'll add the link to our blog post, which is going to detail the step-by-step that we just went through, but also add a description of all the permission set and permission set licenses that you need to add to your users. Again, if you like the content, please take a moment to subscribe. Thanks for watching and have a good day.